Guys, welcome back to the channel. So I have another crime story for you guys. This crime story is about a young couple, 23-year-old Christopher Newsom, 21-year-old Channon Christian. These two were from the Knoxville, Tennessee area, and they had just began dating. On January 6th of 2007, they were actually on a date. And who would have thought going on a date, their life would have taken a turn? This story is very explicit. I'll try to, like all the other kids, I try to put it into my own words and also read from things because, you know, sometimes you want to make sure you're reading it directly from the source. But this case, when I was reading it, I don't think I have ran through a case. Of course, there's a lot of cases that deal with rape, but I didn't realize how detailed or how, what's the word I'm looking for? How just cruel someone can be when it comes to, you know, killing someone. So these two were out on January 6th of 2007. They were going on a date. And then after, they went over to a friend's apartment. And then shortly leaving from the apartment, went to head to Shannon's SUV. But sadly, they did not make it. They were heading to the SUV. Three black men approached them and kidnapped them, put them in the back of a vehicle, blindfolded them, gagged them. This is where their story goes from, you know, you're having a date with your guy, and then the night just turns extremely sour. And little did they know that this would be how their lives would end. So this case involves 5 people, 4 men, 1 woman, and I'm gonna read their names. So we have George Detroit Thomas, Latavius Rome Cobbins, Lametrius Slim Davidson, Vanessa Coleman, and Eric Dwayne E. Boyd. 4 men, they were basically robbers. They have been in and out of the prison. They have done a lot of things when it deals with crimes. So on this fateful night of January 6th of 2007, they were looking for someone to rob. Originally, they state they didn't plan on killing the couple, but once things started to take a turn, this is where it all unfolded. All of these individuals listed had a part in the killing and torture and rape of Christopher and Channon. And of course, by it being extremely late, no one was able to see this actual abduction. So the young couple was taken to a rundown house of LaMarcus DeVell, aka Slim Davidson, was one of the abductors. He brought them to one of his rundown homes. This is where they placed Channon and Christopher. Got there, they were forced into the house, which also had 2 more people in there. It was a woman and her boyfriend. Chris, he was still blindfolded and gagged, and when he got there, they separated the 2, and of course, they started to really beat him up extremely bad. What's so sad is like they just took different turns. Along with beating him, they also sodomized him with different objects. And after they repeatedly beat him and sodomized, they dragged him out the house barefoot, threw him in the SUV, and then drove to an isolated area where there were train tracks. So then once they get to the railroad tracks or wherever in this isolated area, they then repeatedly beat him again, dragged him from the vehicle, and then they also cut off his penis and shot him in the head. And then before leaving him, they drowned him in gasoline and lit him on fire. When I started to read that, I was just like, you have to be so cruel to do some mess like this. So Channon was still at the house. She was still blindfolded and gagged, and she was being watched by the female and her boyfriend that were there at the home. And so the boyfriend and girlfriend name are Rome Coleman and Vanessa Coleman. These 2 were watching Channon at the time that they were out with, you know, Christopher. So when they all returned, this is when it went bad for Channon. All the men began to rape her and beat her, and this happened over a period of 24 hours. And I'm just sitting there like baffled, because as the girl being there, your boyfriend also raped this girl, and then in the article that I read, you know, your boyfriend also made her, you know, do oral. And I'm just like, how can you, even as a woman, allow that to happen? And it's like, you know, I try to think about like, well, what if that was like my sibling or my family member or friend? And even if you know, you didn't know the girl, you could have easily tried to help her. And yeah, you know, you may have been putting your life at danger, but I couldn't live with something like that. Like having 4 men rape this girl, and then you're not really realizing that you're going to go down with this crime as well. Like, you could have done something. So after they begin to repeatedly beat and rape her, Slim then begins to call all the others into the kitchen. And at this time, this is when he repeatedly strangles Channon. But let me tell you about this. As I was reading, Channon literally fought for her life. This girl was so strong-willed. Like, she legit fought until the end. So after he strangled her, she was still alive, y'all. And at this time, so when she was still unconscious, Slim, he had Vanessa check her pulse, and when she hesitated, he screamed at her. And it probably was because she felt guilty. Like, you're allowing this to go down and you're not doing anything to stop it. And it's like, yeah, these are, you know, who they are, but it's like, you could have done something. Call the police, sis, something. So when they realized she was still alive, they began to strangle her even more. And at this time, they put 2 plastic bags over her head. And not only did they put it over her head, they put it over her body, and then her body was thrown into a large trash bin. She was still alive at this time, but she was suffocating slowly because they had the 2 bags over her head wrapped up. Her body is wrapped, and then they threw her in this trash bin. So Shannon's parents were very worried when she never returned home. So they went out to go look for Channon and Christopher. They went to go search for her. They ended up finding her vehicle, and the vehicle actually was about 2 blocks away from the Chipman house. The rundown house is what I call it. They were able to kind of trace this, I guess, due to her cell phone from the pinpoints. The envelope that was recovered from the vehicle had a fingerprint on it, and it was the fingerprint of Lamarcus Davidson, aka Slim. When they went to the home on January 9th, they searched the home, and this is where they ended up finding Shannon's body. So now I'm going to read what the medical examiner stated about the body. So according to testimony of the medical examiner, Shannon's death came after hours of torture, having suffered injuries to her vagina, anus, and mouth. She was raped with an unidentified object and beaten in the head. It was also reported that her body was scrubbed with bleach, which was also poured down her throat in an attempt by her attackers to remove DNA evidence while Channon was still alive. She was then bound with curtains and strips of bedding, her face covered with a bin liner, and body stashed within 5 large trash bins before being placed inside a residual waste disposal unit and covered with sheets. The medical examiner said there was evidence that Channon slowly suffocated to death. So if Vanessa, the girl that was there, would have kind of stepped in or called the law enforcement, Channon could have possibly lived, even though she went through all of these things. Like, that's how I say this girl literally fought to the end to live. And it's really sad that, you know, these inhumane beings did this to her and Christopher. Christopher's body was found by the railroad, and medical examiners have basically stated in his final moments, like I said previously, that he was raped, you know, he was burnt alive, and he was shot execution style. And also in another article, it says that he was actually shot 3 times, and the last one being execution style. Now I want to read the charges of all 5 individuals. So George Detroit Thomas faced a total of 46 charges. He was indicted on 16 counts of felony murder, growing out of the rape, robbery, kidnapping, and theft of Christian and Newsom, of aggravated robbery, 4 counts of aggravated kidnapping, 20 counts of aggravated rape, and 2 counts of theft. Latavius Rome Cobbins faced 46 charges as Thomas. He was also being charged with assaulting a correctional officer while incarcerated pending the trial. In 2003, Cobbins was convicted of third-degree attempted robbery in New York State. He and Davidson are brothers. Cobbins was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Demetrius Slim Davidson was also faced with 46 charges. Ironic with him, he had recently got out of prison for carjacking in August 5th of 2006. He was sentenced to death. Vanessa Coleman. Vanessa was arrested by the police department. She faced in Kentucky, so she ran. She faced 40 Tennessee state charges. Coleman was indicted on 12 counts of felony murder growing out of rape, robbery, kidnapping, and theft of Christian and Newsom. 1 count of especially aggravated robbery, 4 counts of aggravated kidnapping, 20 counts of aggravated rape, and 2 counts of theft. She was convicted and sentenced to 53 years in prison on July 30th of 2010. Eric E. Boyd. He was arrested with connection with the fatal carjacking. Though not indicted by the Knox County grand jury, Boyd faced federal charges in United States District Court as an accessory after the fact for helping the suspects evade the police. Later, Boyd was also accused by Thomas and Cobbins of rape and murder, and a search warrant was obtained for his DNA. The accusations by Thomas and Cobbins did not result in the state charges against Boyd, but he is serving 18 years in federal prison on his conviction as an accessory to the carjacking. Nonetheless, you had a helping hand, so you should have got all the charges. I don't care if you didn't rape her or whatever, like, you let this go down and you didn't do anything to stop it. So you should have been charged just like everybody else. But that's pretty much Christopher and Shannon's story. I tried to put it in my own words as much as possible. And now that I think back on it, I really feel like this was an episode on the ID channel. Oh my goodness. If you know what I'm talking about, can you comment down below? I feel like I've seen this episode, but nonetheless, they died horrifically. And I couldn't even imagine or, you know, feel what they have been possibly thinking at that time. Like, to, you know, it's one thing if you're, you know, as I was reading, like, they were broke, they were homeless, they didn't really have any money. Of course, you know, Slim had just got out of prison. So it's like, even though you didn't have any money, why go to those lengths of killing someone? And like, you brutally rape them, and then not only rape them, you sodomize them, and you know, like I just don't have the answers, and I don't think we ever will. And it just doesn't make any sense, you know, how someone can be so cruel and then get people in on this plan and not one person thinks that this is effed up. Like, are you, like, so many followers in this world? It really doesn't make any sense. So guys, that's today's crime story. Hope you guys like this video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up. But I will see you guys in the next crime story. Bye guys.